Lena lived in a small, peaceful town surrounded by green fields, quiet streets, and friendly faces. People in this town lived simple lives. They woke up early, opened their shops, talked to their neighbors, and ended each day with calm evening walks. Everyone knew everyone. News traveled fast. Opinions traveled even faster. If something unusual happened, the whole town heard about it by lunchtime. Lena was known for her gentle heart and patient nature. She worked at a small craft shop where she made handmade items from wood, cloth, and recycled things. She enjoyed simple creativity. She believed even old things could become beautiful again if someone cared for them. People liked her soft smile and calm voice, but they often thought she was too dreamy. They said she spent too much time imagining possibilities where they saw none. One bright morning, Lena was walking to the market to buy a few supplies. She liked taking the long path that passed by the edge of the town. As she walked, she noticed an old tiny house standing alone near the road. The house had been empty for many years. Children once played near it, but over time they stopped because the house looked worn and tired. The paint had faded, the roof had weak spots, and the windows had thin cracks. People often joked that the house would fall if someone touched the door too strongly. That morning, something new stood in front of the house. A small wooden board leaned against the fence, and on it someone had painted a simple message. The message said that the house was for sale. Under the message was the price. It said $1. Lena stopped walking. She looked at the house, then at the board, then at the house again. The price sounded like a joke, but it was not. She walked closer and placed her hand on the old fence. The wood felt dry, but the fence was still standing. She took a slow breath and stepped back to look at the house again. The house was small, maybe the size of a single room. It had a little porch, a narrow door, 2 windows in front, and a tiny chimney. Everything looked old, but something about the house pulled her attention. It felt like a forgotten story waiting to be told. Lena stood there for several minutes, her mind filled with thoughts. She imagined how the house might look if she cleaned it, painted it, fixed the windows, and added warmth inside. She imagined a small chair on the porch, soft lights inside, and fresh curtains hanging by the windows. She imagined turning the tiny worn place into something special. She knew many people would laugh if she even mentioned such an idea. They would say the house was too small, too old, too weak. They would say she was wasting her time. But Lena believed in possibilities. She believed every broken thing carried a small spark of hope. All it needed was someone who could see it. Lena walked to the nearby shop to ask about the sale. The shopkeeper, an older man named Rafi, greeted her with a friendly smile. When she asked about the tiny house, he looked surprised. He told her the owner had moved away years ago and finally decided to sell the house just to be free from responsibility. No one had shown interest. Everyone in town thought the place had no value. So the owner had set the price at $1, hoping someone, anyone, would take it. Lena thanked him and walked back toward the tiny house. Her steps were slow but firm. She stood before the house again and made her decision. She reached into her bag, took out $1, and walked back to Rafi to complete the purchase. When the people in the shop heard what she had done, they reacted exactly as she expected. Some laughed loudly. Some smiled in disbelief. One person asked her why she would want a house that looked like it might fall during the next heavy rain. Another asked her what she planned to do with such a tiny place. Someone joked that even birds had better homes. Lena did not argue with anyone. She simply smiled and said that she wanted the house. She did not give long explanations. She did not try to convince anyone. She believed her actions would speak louder in time. By the afternoon, the whole town knew what had happened. People passed by the tiny house just to look at it again and remind themselves how strange her choice was. Some pointed at the roof. Others pointed at the faded walls. Someone even laughed and said the price was still too high for such a place. Lena heard the whispers, but did not let them trouble her. She stood in front of the tiny house with her keys in hand. The keys were small and simple. She held them for a moment, then walked to the door. The lock turned with a soft click, The door opened with a long creaking sound. Inside the house, a dim light entered through the cracks in the ceiling. Dust floated in the air like tiny snowflakes. The wooden floor had uneven spots. The walls had marks from the past. The little kitchen area had rust on the metal corner, and the small shelves looked tired. Everything around her seemed forgotten. But Lena did not feel discouraged. She walked slowly through the room. She touched the walls with the calmness of someone touching something old, but important. She opened the single window. A gentle breeze entered. The air felt fresh, even in the old space. She noticed the floor had strong beams under the top layer. She noticed the structure was old, but not broken beyond repair. It needed work, not replacement. Lena took out her notebook from her bag. She always carried it for sketching ideas. She sat on the small stool near the door and began drawing. She drew how the house looked now, then drew how she imagined it could look after her hard work. Her pencil moved quickly across the paper. She drew clean walls, new shelves, a tiny table, a small bed, soft curtains, and warm light from a lamp. The picture made her smile. She closed the notebook and stood again. She walked around the house with a different feeling inside her. She felt a sense of purpose. She felt hope. As she stepped outside, the sunlight touched the porch. Lena looked at the empty space beside the door. She imagined placing a flower pot there. She imagined hanging a small wooden decoration. She imagined people walking by and stopping not to laugh but to admire. She knew fixing the house would take time. She knew it would take patience. She knew she would work alone in the beginning. She knew people might continue laughing for days or weeks, but she also knew that change was possible. She believed beauty could grow in the most unexpected places. Lena locked the house again and walked home with a steady heart. She planned to return the next morning with tools, cleaning supplies, and a new chapter of determination. The tiny house waited quietly at the edge of the town. It stood old, worn, and forgotten. But now, someone finally believed in it. The next morning arrived with soft sunlight rising over the fields. Birds sang gently, and a cool breeze passed through the town. Lena woke up early, much earlier than usual. She felt a quiet excitement inside her. It was the kind of excitement that comes from beginning something new, something hopeful. She prepared a small breakfast, packed her tools, cleaning cloths, brushes, and a little bottle of paint she had left from past projects. She tied her hair and walked toward the tiny house with steady steps. When she reached the edge of the town, the house looked exactly as it had the previous day, worn and lonely. But this time, Lena felt differently. Today she did not see an old forgotten home. She saw a project waiting for her hands, a place ready to be revived. She unlocked the door and stepped inside. The air inside the house felt cool and old, but fresh morning light entered through the small cracks, making everything more visible. Lena placed her bag near the door and began working. She opened the window wide to let air flow through the room. She swept the floor slowly at first, then more firmly as dust rose around her. She moved old broken boards, collected fallen nails, and cleared the corners of spider webs. The more she cleaned, the more the original shape of the house began to show. The wooden floor, though covered with dust, was made of strong, thick planks. The walls, though scratched, held steady. The ceiling had cracks, but nothing that could not be fixed. As Lena worked, she hummed to herself. Cleaning the house felt peaceful. It reminded her of restoring old things in the craft shop. She loved watching places come back to life. After a few hours of sweeping and removing debris, she sat down on the small wooden stool to take a short break. She wiped sweat from her forehead with a cloth and drank from her water bottle. While resting, her eyes wandered across the room. She noticed a strange line on the floor near the corner. It looked like a thin gap, almost hidden under dust. Curious, she stood and walked toward it. She knelt down to inspect it more closely. The gap looked like a board that had been placed differently from the others. She tapped it gently with her fingers. The sound was hollow. Lena felt a sense of curiosity. She carefully used her small tool to lift the board. It rose slowly, with a soft creaking sound. Underneath, she found a tiny hidden space, It was no bigger than a small drawer, but inside she saw a wooden box. The box was old, covered with layers of dust, but it looked carefully made. She lifted it gently and placed it on the stool. For a moment, she hesitated. She did not expect to find something like this. The house had seemed empty at first glance, but now she wondered what memories it carried. She slowly opened the box. Inside, she found a collection of simple treasures. There was a wooden keychain carved with small flowers. The design was delicate and detailed, made with love. She also found an old photograph. It showed a smiling couple standing on the same porch of this tiny house many years ago. The woman in the picture wore a long dress, and the man had a simple shirt and hat. Their smiles looked warm, full of happiness. At the bottom of the box there was a folded piece of paper. The paper was thin and yellowed with age. Lena unfolded it carefully. The handwriting inside was neat and gentle. The note spoke of how the couple had built the tiny house together when they were young. They had created it as a place of comfort, a place filled with love. The note said that even though the house was small, it carried their dreams and memories. It said that the house was built with care, and whoever lived in it next should treat it with the same kindness. Lena felt her heart soften as she read the note. She imagined the couple working together, laughing together, building the tiny home piece by piece. She imagined them sitting on the porch during quiet evenings, talking about life and enjoying simple moments. The discovery added new meaning to her work. This house was not just a tiny structure. It was a place that once held love, hope, and stories. She closed the box gently and placed it on a safe shelf. She planned to clean it later and keep it as part of the house's history. The discovery filled her with renewed energy. She wanted to honor the memory of the couple by restoring the home with care and patience. Just as they had once done, Lena continued cleaning with even more dedication. She washed the windows with warm water until they looked clear again. Light entered more freely now, making the room brighter. She dusted every corner and wiped the walls with a damp cloth. The room slowly lost its forgotten look and began to show hints of warmth. During the afternoon, a few townspeople walked by. They saw Lena working inside the house and stopped to stare. Some shook their heads with amused smiles. Others whispered comments to each other. One person said the house was too tiny to be useful. Another said even if she painted it, it would remain hopeless. A few laughed quietly, thinking she was wasting her time. Lena heard their voices through the open window. But she did not react. She continued her work softly, trusting her own vision. She believed people often laughed at things they did not understand. She believed progress took time. After finishing the cleaning, Lena started repairing the window frames. She used a small hammer to tighten loose nails and a bit of sandpaper to smooth rough edges. Then she painted the windows with the small bottle of leftover paint she had brought. The color was light and gentle, giving the house a fresher look. By the time she finished, the sun had begun to set, filling the sky with warm orange light. Lena stepped outside to admire her progress. The front of the house looked slightly brighter. The tiny porch, though still old, looked less tired. She imagined how it would look once she repaired the railing and added a small plant next to the door. She planned to repaint the entire outside soon, but she still needed supplies. Before locking up for the evening, she returned inside and looked around the room once more. The wooden floor was cleaner. The windows let in more light. The hidden box rested gently on the shelf, reminding her of the past owners. The house felt different now. It felt like it was waking up after a long sleep. Lena packed her tools slowly. She did not feel tired, even after working the whole day. Instead, she felt calm and fulfilled. She knew she had taken the first important step toward restoring the house, and she knew there was still much more to do, but she felt confident. She felt ready. As she walked back home, the evening air felt cool and comforting. She thought about her plans for the next day. She wanted to repair the ceiling next. She wanted to check the stability of the beams. She wanted to paint the inside walls with soft colors. She imagined placing small shelves for decorations. She imagined the cozy space slowly taking shape. When she reached home, she placed her notebook on the table. She opened it and began sketching ideas for the next stages of the transformation. She drew new shelves, a small kitchen corner, and a tidy sleeping area. She drew the porch with a flower pot and maybe a small lantern for light. She smiled as she drew. The tiny house had already become a part of her heart. That night, before sleeping, Lena looked out her window toward the direction of the tiny house. Even though she could not see it from her home, she felt connected to it already. She felt grateful for finding the hidden box. She felt inspired by the story of the couple who had built the house. She promised herself that she would protect the warmth of their memories while creating something new. The tiny house rested quietly at the edge of the town once again. But this time, it no longer stood in silence. It carried a spark of life inside it. It carried hope, and Lena knew the next day would bring even more discoveries as she continued her journey of transformation. The next morning arrived with soft sunshine and cool air. Lena woke up with a sense of purpose stronger than the day before. She prepared a small breakfast, tied her hair, picked up her tools, and walked toward the tiny house with confident steps. The dirt road felt familiar now. Every moment seemed filled with quiet hope. As she approached the house, she paused for a moment to look at it from a distance. Even though it was still worn, she felt something warm in her heart. She imagined how different it would look soon. She believed every day would bring a small improvement, and small improvements would slowly turn into something meaningful. She unlocked the door and walked inside. The air felt cleaner than before because of the fresh breeze from the windows she had opened the previous day. The dust had settled, the floor looked clearer, and the walls looked less tired. She placed her tools on the small stool and began planning her next steps. Her first goal for the day was fixing the ceiling. She walked around the room, looking up carefully to check the weak spots. Some boards were loose, some had cracks, but the main beams looked strong. She smiled, feeling relieved that the house still had a solid heart. She brought a small ladder inside and climbed up to reach the ceiling. She replaced weak boards one by one. She hammered slowly, making sure not to damage the surrounding wood. Each nail she placed felt like a step toward renewal. She sanded rough edges and sealed small gaps. Light from outside made soft patterns on the walls as she worked. Hours passed quietly. Lena did not rush. She took her time, appreciating the process. She stepped down from the ladder after finishing one section and admired her work. The small changes made the house feel brighter. She felt proud of her progress. Around midday, she heard footsteps outside. She walked to the window and saw Mira, her close friend. Mira was carrying a small bag and smiling warmly. Mira had always supported Lena's creative ideas. She believed in possibilities just like Lena did. Myra called out and asked if she could come inside. Lena nodded happily. When Mira stepped in, she looked around with wide eyes. She noticed the cleaned floor, the washed windows, and the repaired ceiling. She told Lena that the house looked very different already. She gently touched the wooden shelf where the hidden box rested. Lena showed her the photograph, the wooden keychain, and the note she had found. Mira listened carefully and felt moved by the story of the couple who had once lived there. Mira placed her bag near the window, said she had brought small tools to help. She said she wanted to assist Lena with building new shelves, fixing the kitchen corner, and maybe shaping some furniture. Lena felt grateful for the support. Working with a friend made everything more joyful. They began by measuring the kitchen area. The space was very small, but they knew they could create something smart and efficient. Mira suggested building a narrow wooden counter, a shelf for cups and plates, and a tiny space for cooking items. Lena agreed. They selected old wooden planks that Lena had collected earlier. They sanded them until they became smooth. Mira cut them carefully using her small saw. They placed each piece together, shaping it slowly into neat shelves. When they installed the shelves on the wall, the kitchen area began to look organized. Next, they worked on the living space. Since the house was tiny, they needed furniture that could save space. Mira helped Lena design a foldable bed that could be lifted during the day and lowered at night. They drew the plan on paper, measured the wall, and built the frame carefully. When the bed was completed, they tested it. It worked smoothly. The two friends smiled proudly. The bed added comfort without taking much space. Throughout the day, the sound of tools echoed softly through the room. Sanding, hammering, cutting, smoothing. Each sound felt like a heartbeat of new life entering the tiny house. From time to time, townspeople walked by outside. Some looked through the open window. They saw Lena and Myra working together. They saw the changes happening inside. Some were surprised. Some still made light comments, but their jokes were quieter now. Curiosity had begun to replace laughter. They noticed how dedicated Lena was. They noticed how the house looked cleaner, brighter, and more hopeful. As the afternoon sun warmed the room, Lena and Myra took a short break. They sat on the small stool and shared simple snacks. The walls around them looked different now. The shelves made the kitchen corner look alive. The foldable bed added shape to the room. Even the air felt warmer. Lena told Myra about her plan for the walls. She wanted to paint them in soft colors, colors that brought peace. She imagined a gentle shade that would make the space feel open and calm. Myra loved the idea. She said she knew a place where they could buy simple paint at a low price. After eating, they continued working on the windows. Lena wanted to add small curtains that would move gently with the breeze. She measured the windows and asked Myra to help choose cloth later. Together, they cleaned the window frames once more, smoothing each corner. The sun began to move lower in the sky, casting long shadows inside the house. Lena and Myra continued working on small details. Myra polished the wooden counter while Lena cleaned the walls. They talked about their childhood memories, laughed at small stories, and enjoyed the peaceful rhythm of the day. Later, they stepped outside to look at the house from the porch. The outside still needed lots of work, but even from the front, the house seemed different because of the warm light coming through the clean windows. The porch floor still needed repair, and the railing was fragile. But Lena already imagined how strong and pretty it would look soon. Myra suggested adding a small bench on the porch after repairing it. She said it would be nice for Lena to sit outside during evenings. Lena liked the idea and added it to her notebook. Before Myra left, she promised to return the next day with more tools and paint. Lena thanked her warmly. The help made a big difference, but the friendship meant even more. When Myra walked away down the road, Lena returned inside the tiny house. She stood at the doorway for a moment, taking in everything they had done that day. The shelves were in place. The bed was ready. The ceiling was repaired. The kitchen area looked organized. The whole room felt more open, more welcoming. Lena walked around slowly, touching the wooden edges, the shelves, and the freshly cleaned floor. She imagined the house fully transformed. She imagined the final day when she would invite the town to see the result. She imagined the surprised faces. She imagined the quiet pride she would feel. The sky turned darker as evening settled. She packed her tools neatly and locked the house. As she walked home, she felt tired, but deeply satisfied. Her steps were slower, but her heart felt light. At home, she opened her notebook again. She sketched the porch repairs. She sketched small decorations for the windows. She even drew a tiny plant she wanted to place outside the door. She wrote a list of things she needed to buy and ideas she wanted to try. Her notebook was slowly filling with dreams and plans. Before sleeping, she looked at the direction of the tiny house once more. She felt thankful for the day. She felt thankful for Myra's help. She felt thankful for the chance to bring life back into something forgotten. The tiny house rested quietly under the night sky. It no longer looked abandoned. It carried signs of renewal. It carried the gentle touch of care. It carried the promise of more change. And Lena knew the next day would bring even more progress, more hope, and more reasons to keep believing in the magic of simple things. The next morning arrived with pale golden sunlight spreading across the fields. Lena woke up feeling excited and hopeful. She knew today would bring important changes because she planned to paint the walls, repair the porch, and add small decorations to make the tiny house feel warm and complete. She dressed quickly, packed her tools, and carried 2 bags filled with new items she had bought the previous evening. The walk to the tiny house felt lighter than usual, almost as if her steps were guided by joy. When Lena reached the house, She noticed that the quiet structure seemed to welcome her. The windows looked bright, the interior looked ready for transformation, and the air around the house felt filled with possibility. She unlocked the door, stepped inside, and smiled as she looked at everything she and Mira had completed the previous day. A moment later, she heard cheerful footsteps approaching from behind. When she turned, she saw Mira carrying 2 cans of paint, brushes, and a roll of soft cloth. Myra waved happily. Lena greeted her warmly, grateful for her presence. Working together had made the journey more enjoyable. Today promised to be another meaningful day. They placed all the supplies on the small stool and discussed their plan. Lena wanted to paint the walls in a gentle shade that would make the tiny house feel open and peaceful. Mira suggested a soft cream color for the main walls and a light pastel shade for small details. They both agreed on the idea with excited smiles. Before they began painting, they prepared the room carefully. They covered the floor with old cloth pieces, moved tools to the corner, and wiped the walls again to remove any leftover dust. The room felt clean and ready for its new heart. Lena dipped her brush into the cream paint and made the first stroke on the wall. The color spread smoothly. It brightened the room instantly. Mira joined her, and together they worked side by side. The sound of their brushes filled the room in a gentle rhythm. The walls slowly changed from dull to warm and inviting. Sunlight entered through the windows, making the fresh paint glow softly. They painted for several hours, taking short breaks between sections. Even during breaks, both of them kept talking about ideas for the porch, the curtains, and small decorations. Their excitement grew as the walls took on a fresh tone. The tiny house no longer looked forgotten. It looked like a place ready for new stories. After finishing the first layer of paint, they stepped outside to get fresh air. Lena looked at the porch with thoughtful eyes. The wood was still old and cracked. The railing wobbled when touched. She knew it needed careful repair before any decoration could be added. Mira agreed and offered to help rebuild the weak railing. They brought out a set of planks, nails, and sandpaper. Lena measured the exact length needed for the railing. Mira held the wood steady while Lena sawed carefully. Together, they shaped each piece and attached them firmly. The railing became solid again. They sanded the edges to make them smooth and safe. Once the railing was fixed, they moved to the porch floor. Lena replaced the cracked boards with stronger ones. Myra held the boards while Lena hammered gently. When they stepped back to look, the porch already appeared stronger, cleaner, and ready for decoration. As they worked, a few curious townspeople passed by. Some slowed down to watch. One elderly woman smiled warmly and told Lena that the house was starting to look beautiful. A small group of children peeked from the road and whispered to each other. They seemed amazed by how different the tiny house looked compared to before. Lena felt encouraged. The laughter she had heard in the beginning had faded, replaced by genuine curiosity and faint admiration. She thanked the elderly woman politely and continued working. After finishing the porch repairs, Lena and Myra took a short break. They sat on the newly strengthened steps and enjoyed a quiet moment as a gentle breeze passed through. From where they sat, they could see the clean windows, the repaired railing, and the fresh paint shining inside. Everything looked hopeful. When they returned to the interior, the paint on the walls had dried. They decided to add a second layer to make the color richer. With steady strokes, they painted again until the walls looked smooth and even. The small house now glowed softly with a warm, peaceful shade that made it feel larger than before. Next, they focused on the kitchen area. Lena took out small hooks she had purchased and installed them above the counter so cups and utensils could hang neatly. Mira brought a small wooden board and helped Lena place it above the shelf to create a new level for additional storage. With every new addition, the kitchen corner looked more organized. The next step was the curtains. Lena had chosen a simple cloth with gentle patterns. Together, they cut and stitched the cloth to fit the windows perfectly. After attaching the curtains, the room felt even more comforting. The fabric moved softly whenever the breeze entered, creating a peaceful atmosphere. Mira then suggested adding a small mat on the floor near the bed. Lena agreed and brought out a woven mat she had made herself some months earlier. When she placed it in the corner, it added a touch of warmth, made the tiny house feel more homelike. The rest of the afternoon was dedicated to decorating small corners. Lena placed the wooden box she had discovered earlier on a shelf, treating it with respect. She cleaned the photograph of the couple and framed it with a simple wooden frame. She placed it near the kitchen corner, giving it a place of honor. Mira admired the photograph and said that its presence made the house feel alive with history. Lena also placed a small vase that she had crafted herself on the counter. She planned to put fresh flowers in it once the porch was fully decorated. She hung a tiny handmade decoration near the window that added a soft charm to the room. The tiny house began to feel like a cozy retreat. It no longer carried the tired look it once had. It carried beauty, warmth, and a sense of belonging. As sunset approached, Mira stepped outside to gather her things. She told Lena how proud she felt to see the house transformed so beautifully. She promised to visit again soon and help with any remaining work. Lena thanked her sincerely. Mira's help had been a blessing. Their friendship had grown deeper through the process. Once Mira left, Lena remained inside the tiny house for a few quiet minutes. She walked slowly around the room, touching the smooth walls, the shelves, the curtains, and the bed frame. She admired the colors, the shapes, and the gentle atmosphere. Everything felt peaceful. Everything felt right. Afterward, she stepped outside and sat on the porch steps. The railing felt firm under her hand. The view from the porch was beautiful. She could see the open fields, the distant hills, and the quiet road. She imagined sitting here in the evenings, sipping tea and listening to the wind. She looked at the tiny house with pride. She had believed in its potential from the beginning. Now, the house reflected that belief through every brushstroke, every repaired board, and every small decoration. She knew that tomorrow she would add the final touches, perhaps a few plants, perhaps a small bench. The sky grew darker as night approached. Lena locked the door gently and walked home, her heart filled with gratitude. She felt that she had given the house a new heart, and in return, the house had given her a deep sense of purpose. The tiny house stood quietly under the evening sky, no longer lonely, no longer forgotten. It held warmth, care, and the promise of a beautiful new future. The sun rose slowly over Greenfield, filling the sky with a calm golden shade. That morning felt different from any other day. The tiny house that once looked weak and forgotten now stood like a bright symbol of hope. Lena woke up early because she wanted this day to be perfect. She knew that the people of the town would visit again. After all, word about her house had spread far. Everyone was curious to see more. She stepped outside with a broom in her hand. She cleaned the porch, watered the small plants near the entry, and arranged the chairs neatly. The flowers in the pots looked fresh and colorful. The little wind chimes near the door created a soft, pleasant sound. The fresh breeze carried the smell of wood and paint, reminding her of the long journey she had taken. As she looked around, she remembered the days when everyone laughed at her for buying a broken house for $1. Those memories no longer hurt her. Instead, they made her smile because she knew how far she had come. The house had changed her life and the life of the people around her. Soon she saw Mira walking toward the house. Mira waved happily and came with a basket of warm bread. She placed the basket on the little table and sat next to Lena. They talked about the work they had done and how the town now looked at Lena with pride. Mira said that people were still talking about the tiny house and that many wanted to learn from Lena. After a few minutes, the first group of visitors arrived. They were from a nearby village and had heard about the charming little space created by a brave girl who refused to give up. Lena welcomed them with a smile and invited them inside. She walked carefully and explained every corner of the house. She showed them the small kitchen that still looked bright and useful. She showed them the space-saving shelves, the foldable bed, and the sunny window where she kept her plants. The visitors were surprised by how everything fit together so well. They said the house felt peaceful and warm. They admired how Lena used simple ideas and simple materials to bring beauty into a forgotten place. Their kind words made Lena feel proud. She thanked them for coming and made sure they felt comfortable. More people arrived through the morning. Some came in families, some came with friends, and some came alone. Everyone had the same reaction when they stepped inside. Their faces slowly changed from doubt to surprise and then to admiration. The tiny house taught them that even the smallest things could hold great value. As the crowd grew, Lena decided to step outside for a moment to take a breath. She stood near the old tree that stood beside the house. The tree had been there longer than anyone in the town. It had watched generations grow and dreams rise and fall. Lena liked thinking that the tree understood her story. She placed her hand on its rough bark and felt its strength. Soon, Mira joined her and said that a group of children wanted to ask Lena a question. She returned inside and saw a group of young children standing in front of her with wide, curious eyes. One of them asked her how she stayed patient when people laughed at her. Another child asked her how she knew the tiny house could become beautiful. Lena sat on a small stool and asked the children to sit with her. She explained gently that people laugh when they cannot see what someone else sees. She told them that she believed in the house much before anyone else did, and belief was what gave her the courage to continue. She said that when you put love and effort into something, it grows into something meaningful. The children listened with great interest. They said they wanted to build things too. Their excitement filled the house with joy. Later in the afternoon, the mayor of Greenfield arrived. He had heard a lot about the tiny house and wanted to see it himself. He looked around with a thoughtful expression. Lena walked beside him and showed him the improvements she made. The mayor nodded and said that her work had brought new life to the community. He told her that the town needed more people with ideas like hers. He also said something that surprised Lena. He said the town wanted to start a small community project, where old buildings could be repaired and used again instead of being left to break or be forgotten. He wanted Lena to guide the project, teach basic skills, and help others find hope in simple ideas. Lena felt her heart beat fast. She had never imagined that her small work could inspire such a plan. She accepted the role with gratitude. Mira hugged her and said she knew Lena would do something big for the town one day. This was the beginning of that journey. As the sun started to set, the crowd slowly began to leave. Some people thanked Lena for her inspiration. Others asked if they could bring friends and family next week to see the house. Lena promised that her door would remain open for everyone. When the last group had left, Lena and Mira cleaned up the porch and arranged the chairs again. They sat together, tired but happy. The sky turned deep orange with touches of pink. Birds flew across the horizon. The calm of the evening embraced the town. Lena looked at the tiny house. Soft lights inside glowed warmly through the clean windows. The little porch felt welcoming. The plants danced in the wind. Everything looked so different from the day she bought the house for $1. She thought of the first moment she saw it, the dust, the broken boards, and the laughter of people passing by. She remembered how she felt something special in the old structure. Now that feeling had grown into a dream that inspired many people. She remembered the wooden box she found under the floor during the early days of repair. Inside it were memories of the couple who had once loved the house. Lena knew the tiny home carried stories of the past, and now stories of the present too. She placed the box on a shelf inside as a reminder that love never fades. Later that night, after Mira left, Lena sat on her porch with a warm cup of tea. The moon rose slowly, shining softly on the house. She closed her eyes and listened to the quiet sounds of the night. She felt calm, proud, and thankful. She knew this was only the beginning. She knew that more homes would be repaired, more people would learn new skills, and more dreams would rise. She felt lucky to be part of something meaningful. The tiny house stood as a symbol of courage, patience, and creativity. It showed everyone that no matter how small something is, it can become wonderful when someone cares about it. Lena proved that value does not always come from money or size. It comes from effort, heart, and vision. Greenfield was no longer a sleepy town. It became a place filled with hope and inspiration. People talked about projects, ideas, and plans. Children dreamed of building things. Adults believed again in the beauty of simple living. And all of this began because a girl bought a tiny broken house for $1 and refused to listen to those who laughed. Lena looked at her house one more time before going inside. She touched the little railing and smiled. She whispered a small thank you to the house for giving her a new path. Then she walked inside and closed the door gently.